So Anna, I think that we can start now because well, for my introduction, I think that well, it's okay if they miss some. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So maybe I think that on behalf of the Japan Bird Research Association and the Hong Kong Bird Society, I really welcome everybody to join this webinar. So I will make the first presentation, and then Anna, you will facilitate the others, and my presentation will be seen as something is like a introduction of what is this webinar and what is our project all about. Let me just share my PowerPoint first. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, let me see. Let me. Okay, so you can see my PowerPoint, everybody. Okay, let me introduce myself. I'm Simba Chan, working for the Japan Bird Research Association, and also working on the Landbird monitoring and and the research projects in Asia. And welcome to the webinar. Let me just give an introduction about this webinar, and also we will mention about the output of a roundtable discussion on the Landbird strategy in Asia at the Ornithological Conference last year, held in Beijing. But first of all, let us just come to a very basic question: is why we want to focus on Landbird. You see, there are two charts here. That is actually I got just yesterday. It is a state of America's State of America's Bird. It's published by the Cornell University. It is about the status of different species, different groups of birds, and you can see that also in the USA, the open habitat birds are being the one that is declined the most. You see here, it will. The one declined the most over the decades is the grassland birds and the arid land birds, and these are two are the birds found in open habitat. In fact, not only America, but we find that from the bird monitoring scheme all over the world, in Europe, in North America, in India, in Japan, we all found that the smaller land birds, mostly passerines, particularly those who share the open habitat, they are declining. They are the group of birds that is declining the most, while the water birds and wetland birds you see here, they are recovering. They are increasing gradually in the last few decades, probably because of they were the focus of the protection and conservation in the last few decades, and now we are showing that there are some results when succeed in bringing them back. And why we actually that we focus on the landbird? What actually alarm us? Remind us the importance of landbird. It was because of a species of landbird, an open habitat bird called yellow-breasted bunting. That's shown in the on the slide here. I think most of you are familiar with the yellow-breasted bunting. The yellow-breasted bunting, it was really an abundant species, according to some literatures written in about 40 or 50 years ago. When they migrate, there's a whole big flocks of thousands or tens of thousands of yellow-breasted bunting during the migration. But we find out that since the 1990s they are declining. In the year 2004, it was listed as the near threatened globally by the IUCN. And only 13 years later, in 2017, it was upgraded to become the critically endangered. and this is the first passerine passerine bird that used to be regarded as common, now lists as critically endangered in Asia. And that is the global decline of the yellow-breasted bunting. We are not quite sure. Well, we are not absolutely sure about the cause of the decline. Hunting may be one of the issue, and but like the habitat change, like the use of pesticides. Well, this is something that we still don't know, and there's still a lot of things we need to find out. And why we know that the yellow-breasted bunting was declining, it was because in Japan we have the breeding bird survey, we have the monitoring of all species of birds since the 1970s, and we actually map and record all the birds breeding in Japan. And in the 1970s, the yellow-breasted bunting was found breeding in 52 locations in Hokkaido, and it is only breed in Hokkaido in Japan. But during the survey in the late 1990s, we found that there is only 15 locations where could be found in Hokkaido. So their distribution is becoming reducing and restricting. And by 2017, only one known breeding ground left in Hokkaido. And I must say that in the last 2 or 3 years, we found out that even in that remaining site, sometimes there is no evidence that is breeding. So it is becoming in danger of being extinct as the breeding bird in Japan. So this is what we really alerted, particularly in the 1990s, that this once common land bird is becoming rare. So when we know that yellow-breasted bunting is declining very rapidly, we have an estimation of globally about 80 to 90% decline in 3 decades. We get into many of the ornithologists and conservation organizations in Asia. We got together at the Sun Yat-sen University in Guangzhou, China, in 2016 for the compilation of an action plan. And during the time of compilation, we also start to have some awareness work and field work on the yellow-breasted bunting, like promotion of the status. Is status like producing a lot of leaflets and posters in many different countries, and also we started to survey of the yellow-breasted bunting in places like Sakhalin, like in Mongolia. And then yellow-breasted bunting, formerly it was very little known passerine, but by the end of the 2010, it is becoming it has become one of the most studied and passerine in Asia. And the action plan was adopted by the Convention of Migratory Species in late 2023, and it was launched last year at the COP 14 in Samarkand in Central Asia. So we have an action plan, and that this action plan, if you are interested, it can be downloaded from the website of CMS, or if you are interested, you can contact me and I can give you the link to download this action plan. But having an action plan, that means it's not solving any conservation issues. We need to have some actions. So that's the reason why we have those webinars, we have those survey, we have those workshops, and also some actions in the field. Yellow-breasted bunting is a relatively well-studied species now, but however, from the results of the monitoring of the land bird in other places like Europe, like North America, like India, we know that the land bird is still declining, particularly the open habitat land birds like farmland and grassland. They are declining universally, almost everywhere. And this is some still we are not quite sure about the reason why. Maybe the change of habitat, maybe some other issue, and that is really we really need to work more. However, in Asia, we have another problem. Is we know the yellow-breasted bunting is declining because it is well studied, but many other species of land bird we still do not have a monitoring scheme. So when you ask the ornithologists in Asia, they know they feel many species of land birds are declining, but they cannot really say about the data because it has not been have a good monitoring scheme or well studied. That we know about the decline of many birds in Europe because there are good monitoring scheme, but not in Asia. So that's the reason why that we also for the yellow-breasted bunting project, we also start to study some of those open habitat birds in Asia, particularly the buntings. Like for the last few years, we have initiate and activity called the bunting count, which we will have a report at this webinar to report about the results of the bunting count. And this is something that like a promotion of hope that more people could be would be aware of the situation of land birds, and more people will join the monitoring and conservation of these species. And we particularly need what we particularly need is citizen science. One of the reasons why that the land birds we do not have a good information of many species of land bird is land bird monitoring is more difficult than water bird monitoring because land birds are almost everywhere, and we need a lot of bird watchers and manpower in the field to work on this. In Asia, at the moment, Japan has some good data starting from the 1970s, and some countries like Korea and China are also starting to have their own monitoring of birds. But for most Asian countries, it is still at the beginning. So that's the reason why that we think the citizen science is have to be promoted, and also we need to have some monitoring scheme for the land birds in northern Asia, because there are migratory bird agreements between Russia, China, South Korea, and Japan. And under these migratory agreement, we have established East Asian land bird monitoring scheme. But that will only cover northern Asia. We really hope that we can also establish a mechanism that can cover the wintering countries like Southeast Asia and Southern Asia. And as I said that the bunting count is a start, and it's an attempt to start to do some more monitoring of the birds in the wintering ground. And we also, for promotion, we have previously have organized some webinars. So back to the Asian Ornithological Conference. The first Asian Ornithological Conference was held in 2021. That was 4 years ago. And it was at first it was scheduled to be held in Zhuhai in southern China. Unfortunately, because of the COVID pandemic, it became an online conference. And at that conference, we have a roundtable discussion about monitoring of the yellow-breasted bunting, and these for the roundtable discussion, we have very good discussion and suggestions, and that's the reason why we have started some work in during the COVID years, which was quite difficult because we could not do any have any international travel, so each country will start to work on themselves. Last year, we have the first Asian Ornithological Conference. We can meet face to face. That was held in Beijing in November of 2024. At the Asian Ornithological Conference, there were several sections focusing on land birds like bird banding, like the yellow-breasted bunting population, and also have a round table, and we will have some report of sections like on the bird banding and also on the flats to the land bird, which will be reported by other people who have other experts who have participated in the conference later in this webinar. And also at this Asian Ornithological Congress, we have established an Asian Ornithological Alliance with some of the leading ornithologists in the region, and we want to promote the study of ornithology in Asia and also conservation of birds. And during the first discussion, we agree that land bird is an obvious gap in Asia, and that we should have some more work done on the study and protection of the land birds. And let's just say that the third Asian Ornithological Conference, it was decided to be held in Singapore next year in 2026. We hope that by that time we will have some more progress in promoting the land bird monitoring and also the protection. And at the last Asian Ornithological Congress, I should quickly wrap it up that because I only have 20 minutes. So we have a roundtable discussion, and the roundtable discussion that the ornithologists from Asia, we say that we need to promote the bird banding, because in many countries we still do not have a very standardized bird banding. And also we hope that we can start the breeding bird survey in the atlas, like in Japan and other countries. That will be a very good tool about summarizing the changes of population and distribution of the land birds. And of course, we need training in many countries, because banding and also surveying need experienced persons. We are starting to do some training course, and also in many Asian countries. And my colleague Anna will report one of the recent training course held in Cambodia. We hope that there will be more training given to Asian countries, and then we have a bigger team of people who can do the survey and do the banding in the field. And of course, we need a very good international cooperation and coordination in the region. Just like last week, we also have a meeting, international meeting with several countries, Nepal, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Thailand, held in Thailand on the yellow-breasted bunting, and that will also be reported later at this webinar. So we want to strengthen the national and international workshop network. One of the way we suggest is to have a structure similar to the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership. And I think that you're probably all familiar with the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership. At the moment, it is only focused on seabirds and also water birds. And we believe that it will be good if we can all cover all migratory species of birds. Because it will be very time consuming and also not very economical to establish another structure. But that is something that we need to discuss and see how we actually raise this network of land birds inside Asia. And also the Asian Ornithological Alliance established, and they think that the land bird is important, but we can also further have a further discussion of how can the Asian Ornithological Alliance help in promoting of the land bird study and also promoting international cooperation. So it is a long way, and we need your support and also your advice. And at this meeting, at the end of after the presentations, we will have about an hour of discussion. So we will have time for the question and answer, and we will also hope that we can discuss some of the touring topic like the management plan on the Landbirds and what we have the existing program and what we aim to achieve, and also what are the gaps and resources for Landbird monitoring in Asia, and also your suggestion on networking with Landbird in conservation and management in Asia, how we can gradually develop a conservation strategy, and who should lead the compilation of this strategy. And I would really like to welcome all your suggestions later today during the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simba. So as Simba said, I think we'll have time for questions in the discussion. So we can probably move on to our next presentation, which will be by Krishna on the field survey techniques for wintering yellow-breasted buntings. Is he here?
Krishna's here.
Yes.
Yeah. Krishna, can you share your slides?
I can explain remotely. So Anna, can you share my presentation, please?
Sorry?
So I have some technical issues here. So I can.
Okay. Then I will share your slides on my screen. Just tell me when you want me to change slide. Let me just get them. Second. So can everybody see that?
Yes, thank you, Anna, and I sincerely apologize for some of the technical issues, so I cannot upload my presentations through my laptop. And then this is about the very recent one workshop about the field survey techniques for wintering yellow-breasted bunting. That was jointly organized by the Kong and University, Thailand, and Japan Bird Research Associations. And that was held in the 6th to 8th March in the Kong and Thailand. So next slide, please. So in this slide, in this workshop, we mainly discuss and sharing about the yellow-breasted bunting monitoring methods and its preliminary results in the wintering countries from the Cambodia, Thailand, and some from the Laos, Myanmar, and Nepal. And we also discussed very briefly about the census technique in the wintering grounds because it is still not well defined and well structured. So we discussed about the different types of the monitoring mechanism in the wintering grounds. For example, a roosting count, transit count in the roosting and in the feeding grounds, and some of the point count methods in the feeding grounds. And at the same time, we also discussed about the conservation challenges in the wintering grounds, covering the wintering country. And in this workshop, we also did some of the field work and field practice, like the roosting count. So for that, we visited the roosting sites in the Konkan and monitoring in the before the sunrise and in the in just at the time of the sunset. So we also practices our own monitoring practices at the same time. Exchange the information and exchange the idea among the researchers. So besides that, we also fortunately did one of the very important training that Simba already highlighted in his presentations: the trapping, ringing, and tracking of yellow-breasted bunting and some of the other birds in the feeding ground of yellow-breasted bunting in Konkan. So that was actually the really the importance first-hand training from the Thailand to the Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Nepal. So we can learn from the team who are very experienced and very expertise on those things. And in the workshop, we also discuss about the future plans, like the coordinated winter count of yellow-breasted bunting in the wintering grounds, and some of the ringing training in the other countries and conservation camping and networks. So next, please. So in the workshops, here is some highlights of the presentation from the Cambodia. They are monitoring the roost count of the yellow-breasted bunting in the winter ground of the different sites in the different years. And some of the figures are highlighted here, like the 2023 to 24 wintering periods and 24 to 25 wintering periods in the Cambodia. They also developed the monitoring guidelines of the yellow-breasted buntings, and they are continually monitoring the yellow-breasted buntings since 2023. And still monitoring for the 2024-25. So there is not a completed data for the all sites, but there is some of the promising the record of the yellow-breasted bunting in the roosting sites. Next, please. Similarly, in the Thailand, they are also monitoring the yellow-breasted bunting in the roosting counts from the 2022 to 23. And they have recorded about the 50,000 or more than 50,000 yellow-breasted bunting in the wintering grounds in the different roosting place. And since 2019, the team of Thailand also started the ringing of the yellow-breasted bunting, and they have already ringing the more than 300 individuals of yellow-breasted bunting in the wintering grounds, and they are tracking about their movements. So during the workshop time, we also counted the roosting sites in the King Loa of the Konkan, and we recorded at least about the 48,000 individuals of the yellow-breasted buntings. So next, please. In Thailand, experts also tracking the yellow-breasted bunting by the PSF radio telemetry trackings, and they are monitoring their movement, their preference sites in the roosting sites and feeding grounds. And they also calculate the time spent of the individual in the roosting sites and as well as in the feeding grounds. And some of the individuals are moving about the 5 kilometers up to the 10 kilometers from the roosting sites for their foraging behavior. And they also calculate some of the time series, like the leaving the roosting sites in the early in the morning before the sunrise or just after the sunrise, and spending the time about the 3 hours in the foraging grounds. And they spend a lot of the times in the resting in the feeding grounds. Some of the roosting trees are roosting reeds in the feeding grounds, and they back to the night stay roosting sites just before the sunset. So next, please. So there was the presentation from the Laos, and they presented some of the historic record of the yellow-breasted buntings, but there is not a recent systematic survey of the yellow-breasted bunting, but they committed to the record or survey the potential sites in Laos for the next wintering seasons to record the actual distributions and to estimate their populations in the Laos. So next, please. Similarly, the presentation from the Myanmar also highlighted the quite good population of the yellow-breasted bunting in the different wintering grounds. And for the 2024 to 25 wintering season, which is ongoing for now, also recorded about the 42,000 individual in the one roosting sites. And they also highlighted there is some threats of the grassland converted to the agricultural lands, which is similar to the all other wintering grounds, and there is the firing in the grassland as well as in the remainings of the farmlands. And the weak law enforcement is also lacking. The awareness is also the threats for the yellow-breasted bunting, and the Myanmar also planning to the more extensive survey and the systematic count of the yellow-breasted bunting in the next wintering season. So next, please. Similarly, also presented the monitoring result of the yellow-breasted bunting in Nepal. So since 2018, the continuous monitoring the wintering populations of the yellow-breasted buntings, more than 30 locations in the different parts of the countries, and that shows that there is the very fluctuation of the number of the yellow-breasted bunting in the country. But in the recent year, probably that there is the more a wider network of the bird watchers are in the monitoring researchers, so there is more record of the yellow-breasted buntings. Then also presented about the habitat monitoring of the yellow-breasted bunting in Nepal, and that shows the yellow-breasted bunting predominantly utilize the agricultural lands. That is about the 80% or 79% with the grassland patches, and there's some minimum presence of the reeds. And they are mostly recorded in the dry habitat followed by the wet habitats. And the combination of the crop cover and the grass height is the best model for predicting the yellow-breasted bunting abundance in Nepal. And this research is also shared in the workshops. Next, please. So with the presentation, so we are very, very seriously discussed about the different monitoring technique in the different countries, and share the different experience and the different habitat conditions and different monitoring techniques in the wintering grounds and the time period. So most of the country in the wintering grounds, so we agree about the monitoring of the yellow-breasted bunting is good to be monitored in the wintering sites is in the morning times, like before the sun sets. Because before the sunrise. But it depends on some of the weather condition, like the Myanmar prefer to monitor the yellow-breasted bunting in the roosting sites in the evening, because in the morning times, most of the roosting sites are covering by the cloud or foggy area. So they are more relevant to monitor the yellow-breasted bunting in the evenings. So we also discussed about some of the factors to consider during the monitoring of the yellow-breasted buntings, like the weather, disturbance, and even the bird behavior, because in the evening there is the mixed flock of the different similar sized birds, like the munia, pipit, that may make some of the confusions to know the exact number of the buntings, because in the mornings, yellow-breasted bunting leaves the roosting sites quite earlier than the other birds. So we also discussed about and shared some of the experience and idea of the yellow-breasted bunting census technique in the wintering grounds. And we also recommended for the double observers, at least the more than two observers, and they count the yellow-breasted buntings independently from these same points, and that can estimate some of the closer number of the bunting in the wintering sites or even in the roosting sites. So using the recorder is more convenient to know the exact number of the birds, and at least monitoring the once in the month can collect some of the good set of the data. So during the monitoring, we also need to consider the habitat characteristics, like the vegetation, type of vegetations, the dominant vegetations, height of the vegetations, and the pairs of the vegetations are in the habitat, like the wetlands or the croplands or something like that. So we very intensely discuss about our experience and in some of the potential factors need to be considered in the census in the wintering grounds. So next, please. So we also practices in the roosting count. So the queen, I explained the mystically, but the king lower roosting sites is the one I think is one of the best roosting sites of the yellow-breasted buntings in the wintering countries, and we visited in the evenings there to know about the sites, to become the familiar with the sites, and to make the idea where from the which direction and from which sides the elaborated money come to the roosting site. So in the evenings we also visited in the roosting site, and in the next mornings we divided the team into the 3 different groups, and there is the double observers, and some of the team counted independently in the 3 different locations of elaborated buntings, leaving the roosting sites for the feeding. So at least we counted the 48,322 elaborated bunting that leaving the King Lower roosting sites for feeding. So that was amazing morning, and so we never imagined to see this such a large number of the elaborated bunting in the single place. And we also visited to the feeding grounds to monitor and to see the feeding activities of the elaborated buntings. And in the farmlands and in the croplands, we roughly counted about thousands of the elaborated bunting. These are feeding in the different the remains of this rice field and in the some around the farmlands. So next, please. So in the next day, so one of the most exciting field work we did during this workshop, so that mist netting, field training in the King Lower feeding site. So most of us were very new for the mist netting activities. So the friends and from the Thailand, they really teach us, and they practices the on hand practice of the elaborated bunting in the feeding ground. So we are able to trust the elaborated bunting first of time, and we ring the 8 individual of the elaborated bunting, and we catch some of the other birds, and also put the ring. So that was the very, very exciting and the very emotional moments to ring, to catch and to handle and the elaborated bunting in the wintering grounds. So next, please. So after that, so we have the very seriously and very intensely discuss about the future plans in the wintering ground. So we come to the conclusions. At least we need to continue the coordinated elaborated bunting count in the wintering range. So we can estimate the population of the elaborated buntings in the wintering countries, some of the idea about the distribution and population of the wintering elaborated bunting, and we purpose some of a couple of weeks to count the elaborated bunting in the whole wintering range. So in the last week of February and the first week of March is the purpose date for the coordinated elaborated bunting count, and it should be continuing annually, and initially it is going to be led by the friends from the Thailand. So in the roosting counts, that was the most preferred counting or monitoring tool for the elaborated bunting in the wintering ground. So we need to develop some of the more robust guideline of the elaborated bunting in the roosting area, and better to be published for the wider audience who can apply that guidelines in their respective areas. So we are also planning for that. So encourage the bird watchers for recording the elaborated bunting and other migratory land birds especially in the wintering grounds, and need to encourage the student for the more research on the elaborated bunting, others open habitats, migratory land birds and their habitat and in the ongoing threats, and also discuss about to study about the impact of the agrochemicals and exploring the land management strategies for the private and agricultural areas, because the elaborated buntings and other buntings are more dependent on the agricultural farmlands, and there is the massive use of the agrochemicals in the all over the wintering range countries. So we need to think. So we need to study at first about that impact to the elaborated bunting and other land birds. There's the threat for the illegal mist netting. That is the big problem for the elaborated bunting for the almost all wintering countries and wintering range. So we need to discuss about that and the mitigation strategies for stopping the illegal mist netting to catch the yellow-breasted bunting and their supply to the markets. So definitely we need the conservation campings and the wider network extending to the some of the Vietnam, Bangladesh, India, because these are also the wintering grounds and wintering countries of the yellow-breasted bunting. But unfortunately in that workshop we cannot participated from the Vietnam, Bangladesh, India. So in the future, so we need to extend our network to the wider regions to covering the most of the wintering range of the yellow-breasted bunting. Next, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Krishna. Okay, then it is my turn. So let me just prepare the presentation. Okay, can everybody see that? Just get it up. Okay. Okay, so hi, I'm Anna. I am the birdwing coordinator for the Hong Kong Birdwatching Society. And over the last week, I was lucky enough to participate in the Landbird Monitoring and Conservation Training Workshop in Cambodia, which was similar to what Krishna just described in Thailand. But in Cambodia, there is not much ringing going on at all at the moment, not much bird ringing. I think the last time was about 10 years ago with Philip Round. And so we wanted to go and introduce the idea of using bird ringing as a monitoring tool for land birds. So a quick overview, this was a collaboration between the Cambodia Ministry of the Environment, BirdLife, Nature Life Cambodia, the Wildlife Conservation Society, and the Hong Kong Birdwatching Society, as well as we had Phil Round come from Mahidol University from Thailand as well. And this was just a 3-day, quite an intensive workshop with an introduction to land bird monitoring activities going on in Hong Kong, Thailand, and Cambodia. We were joined by around 20 participants. So we had NGO technical staff, protected area managers, and rangers. And we aimed to introduce bird ringing, like I just said, to bird surveyors or any other bird conservation, anybody interested really, in Cambodia. We wanted to look at the potential ringing sites within the BPL, which you just heard about a little bit and we're going to talk about, and of course to improve international collaborations. And then of course we had a special focus on the yellow-breasted bunting, which roosts within the BPL. So what is the BPL? Well, that's Bong Prek Lapok, which is an important bird biodiversity area, sort of set in southern Cambodia, quite close to the border with Vietnam. It is an area of over 8,300 hectares, and it has sort of 4 main habitats, which is grassland, sort of shrubby areas, water with a lot of aquatic vegetation, and 61% of it is paddy fields. So you can actually see the top right photo here is the headquarters in the BPL where we were staying. And then at the bottom, you can see one of our ringing sites, which was near the paddy fields, quite close to the headquarters. Oh, and it, of course, is the wintering ground of the yellow-breasted bunting. So our activities and objectives. So we started off with giving presentations, giving an overview of migratory species along the East Asian Australasian flyway with a focus on land birds. Then we had a presentation from BirdLife describing the declines and the possible threats to land birds across Southeast Asia. And then we shared our different monitoring techniques and conservation efforts from Cambodia, Thailand, and Hong Kong. And then the second part of our workshop was, of course, to talk about bird ringing and give an absolute introduction to bird ringing, how we do it, what is it, why do we do it, and how we can use the data collected and other aspects of bird ringing. So, for example, I really like using bird ringing to educate the local community and engage them. All these different things on how we can use bird ringing in our fight to protect our birds. So we went also for a roost site visit. This is about 10-minute boat ride away from the BPL headquarters, and it is where they carry out evening and morning counts, as you also heard in the last presentation. And just within an hour or two on the evening of the 7th, which is the first day of our workshop, we counted several hundred yellow-breasted buntings coming in for the night. And we also wanted to go to this area to identify where we could set our nets, like which areas would be best for us to catch some buntings, but not too many buntings, because a lot of the biggest aspect of this workshop was to train, and then you don't want too many birds. So yeah, the ringing. So we had one day of intensive ringing with a morning session and an afternoon session. So in the morning, like I showed you before, we set up by the paddy fields. And this turned out to be quite a good spot where we caught quite a range of different species, but we did not catch yellow-breasted bunting. So in the afternoon, we decided to move our nets from this area to the roost site and just set them up along the edge of the roosting ground. And we did indeed get some yellow-breasted buntings. So ringing results. So we caught 38 individuals total of 8 species, including the 2 yellow-breasted buntings. Our most numerous species was the bioweaver, with 17 of them. And the other species were black-browed reed warbler, oriental reed warbler, scaly-breasted munia, brown shrike, Palacis grasshopper warbler, and the Eurasian tree sparrow. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about An Preng, which is another very important area in southern Cambodia. It is the only flyway network site in Cambodia, and it is a wetland that provides a safe habitat for the Cyrus crane. And I know we're talking about landbirds at the moment, but I just wanted to share some of the conservation work going on in Cambodia. So this is an area of over 380 hectares. And what I found really interesting about it is that in 2019, Nature Life Cambodia began a project to protect the more traditional rice planting methods, which in turn helps to protect the cranes. So instead of the slash and burn that we see all over Southeast Asia, they will leave the rice that is not harvested for the cranes to feed on. And of course, this also benefits other species as well. And furthermore, they also work with local farmers to give them incentives to follow the same methods. So if these farmers follow the same methods, they will be able to sell their rice at a premium price. So now they are working with 120 farmers, and they produce over 300 tons of rice per year. This area also allows for the long-term monitoring of Cyrus cranes, and it's also a great area for education for the local community and engaging tourists that come to see the Cyrus crane. Oh, and while we were there, we were lucky enough to also see over 5,000 black-tailed godwits coming into roost. So it's a really important wetland. So finally, I wanted to leave us with a little vision for the future, which will echo everything that we've already heard from Simba and from the AOC. So yeah, of course, we want to make sure that we have a functioning Cambodian bunting monitoring network. In the future, what we are sort of aiming for is to be able to set up a ringing station within the BPL so that we can have a better monitoring of their yellow-breasted buntings, as well as the other land birds that live there. It's going to require more collaboration, more training workshops in future. And overall, of course, we want to increase the connectivity of land bird monitoring in Cambodia and across Asia. If you hear a bird, I'm really sorry, it's my clock. I promise I don't have a live bird in here. Sorry. Yeah, of course, we want to maintain and expand international collaborations across the region so that we make sure that we have this integrated protection program and we have this comprehensive overview of what Asia's land birds populations are like. And so finally, I wanted to leave you with a little plug. So this is the Hong Kong Birdwatching Society's ringing team's blog. So I will be uploading on here more information about our Cambodian workshop and more about the species that we caught. On here, we talk a lot about how we age certain species, which can be really helpful for teaching other ringers in the region, if that's what you're interested in. Please note that this also is helpful for bird watchers. The techniques that you learn through ringing to age birds can also sometimes be used in the field, which thus can then, you can gain more information from your observations in the field. but it's not super scientific. It's a fairly easy read, so that hopefully everybody can gain something from that. So if you're interested, please take a look. So thank you Simba for organizing this webinar, and thank you to all our partners around Asia who helped this training workshop become possible. It was really, really inspiring to see the passion and dedication from everybody. And a final word, if you are interested in bird ringing and you want to know more, or you just want more resources, I have a lot that I'm more than happy to share with anyone. Please feel free to email me. And thank you. Okay, and with that, we can move on to our next speaker, which is Batmuk. Are you there, Batmuk? See.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, let me share my screen. Can you see my screen? Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Batmuk. I'm ornithologist at the Wildlife Science and Conservation Center of Mongolia. This is my great honor to be presenting this presentation. Thanks for organizing this webinar. And my presentation is about what we have discussed during the Asian Ornithological Congress and the session of the Asian bird ringing. And in my presentation, I will be mostly talking about what presenters has discussed and how we learn from them. And let's begin. And in the Asian Ornithological Congress, we have made the special session for bird ringing. Thanks to the organized by Tianhao and Simba. And we had the presenter from China, South Korea, Russia, and Mongolia, and Hong Kong, South Korea, and Thailand. And we discussed about what the current situation for bird ringing, such as example in China, we have about more than 50 ringing stations since working from 1982, coordinated by a National Bird Ringing Banding Center. In South Korea, there is about 4 ringing stations managed by National Institute of Biological Resource. In Japan and South Korea and Southeast Asian countries, we know already about MAX, which is initiated by American government to investigate about surveillance about avian disease, and which is the background of the bird ringing across Asia. After that, in South Korea, 1993, they started the bird ringing constantly using the government funds. After that, we moved to Russia about the Baikal bird ringing stations, which is the nearest to the Mongolia in the East Asian flyway, and which is also worked since 1976 to 1990s, then suspended for more than 20 years, then continued again. And the youngest one is Mongolia. It was we had started only 2015. However, we started already 4 ringing stations, which is rapidly increasing. I would say because it's one of the main advantage for us is the lack of manpower. If you have not many ornithologists, bird ringing is very useful tool to discover more about birds, even science especially, to collect more data and with the low budget and not many manpowers. And so far, in Mongolia, we have 4 ringing stations managed by Wildlife Science and Conservation Center, in Mongolian Bird Conservation Center as well, and 3 of them managed by our organization. All the ringings from the Mongolia is supplied from Helgoland according to contract. We need to report back to the Germany. That means. After that, Anna reported about Hong Kong ringing groups. In Hong Kong, there's 4 ringing groups, and since 2010, they started the standardized ringing activities. And after that, Professor Chang Yong-choi reported about the Seoul National University migratory bird teams. They have 2 ringing stations since 2018. And moved to Thailand, we heard the report from Jirot about Bang Porabat wetland research station, which is the longest ringing station in Thailand, maybe in Southeast Asia. After that, we heard some experience from the Europe, reported by Wenjie Chen. Okay, many of us already know why we ring birds, but maybe today we have some new friends which is unfamiliar about bird ringing. We know that the bird ringing is a very useful tool for studying bird migration patterns through the banding and recapture, recite back. Also, it's if you use it for longer term, it can be also helpful for estimating population size of birds and what's the species increasing or declining can be very useful. And also it's helpful for locating hotspots for bird species, especially all the stations are located in the very bird-rich areas. And like in detail, it's about the migration, geographic connectivity, population structure, like as Anna said, it's aging, sexing, and trends of the populations, and the survival and the mortality, the threats. And if we do it very long term, it can be helpful for climate change impact for such certain species it's arriving early or departure later like that. And since we are catching one the wild bird, it's also a very crucial tool for collecting biological samples like tissues and parasites. Also, it's a very good tool for environmental monitoring and also main tool for education and communications, especially training younger ontologists like that. But in Asia, the bird banding is very beginning stage, I would say. If you see that Europe in certain species, it's a kind of a spider web, you know. It's well connected, well developed already. But in Asia, we still have very blank spots to discover more about the bird ringing and establish more networks. Why we saying that? Because Asia is one of the most populated continent. More than half of the human population live in Asia. Also, one of the most wide biodiversity regions, one of the most threatened regions because threats are like habitat loss and habitat change, and hunting, illegal trade, and human consumption. As the Simba told about the ill-breast bunting, but it's not only ill-breast bunting. There's many other species still used for food consumption, and pollution, pesticides, and chemicals. Also, that's why we have many challenges like high human densities, relatively poor livelihoods, and also which also triggered the lack of coordinate monitoring system, lack of information exchange, limited conservation effort, many number of countries, and maybe the main issues like a higher diversity of languages and cultures and the legislation and law enforcement levels. It's back to the country reports and the report from banding China. Since 90s, they have started banding, and the number of birds are very high, 4 million birds of 850 species in 120 sites. You can see that the bigger black dots in the country map, which is the more birds are banded. And from the report from Lu Dongping from National Bird Ringing Center, China, they have analyzed some ringing station data. They show us about 24 active stations, and 6 of them identified as very decline of the species diversity, even though numbers are still the same, but the species numbers are very declining, such as many bunting species are declining a lot. But some of the buntings are also moderately increasing. After that, we move to Korea, South Korea. They started 1993. The average ringing about 8,000 individuals, about 180 species. And this, based on their long-term monitoring in 1919 to 2017, the yellow-breast bunting is still declining curve, then started from bit of increasing from 2017. Hopefully, it's some effort we made in China, mainly in China, to stop the illegal hunting issues. In Korea, they have 4 birding stations across the western coastal islands. And we moved to the inland Russia, that you can see comparison table of the 2 period of ringing. You can see that the yellow-breast bunting in Brisa Aurora was a very huge decline. Like recent years, they only catch 1 to 20 individuals, but it was used to be like thousands individuals in 1970 to 1990s. In Mongolia, for example, horse birding stations, we started celebrating 10th year anniversary this year, and we have banded more than 50,000 individuals of 200 species in horse. And you can see some telescopes are still okay in terms of the numbers, but some trashed and shrike declining smoothly. And even though we started very lately, I would say we are doing quite good. We have banded about 90,000 individuals of 309 species. And from the Anna's presentation, we learned about the new method for inputting data, storing and collecting, which is something we heard new. Maybe Anna will explain later about how we can establish this scheme for the ordering stations. From Giroud's presentation, we also heard some new insights of the survival, like longevity of the certain species, like dusky warbler is less than 10-gram bird, which is survived almost 8 years. And same as some reed warblers, Acrocephalus also goes to 8 years, almost 9 years. And based on the report, some stations must be funded from government, like China's ringing stations mostly based on the protected areas to managing the biodiversity monitoring. But in Mongolian example, we have mostly based on the volunteers who are very keen to help us, dedicated for their time and experience. They teach us. Also, they stay more than 2 weeks to help us for ringing. Thanks for them. And as I mentioned, also the bird ringing is a very public engagement tool to attract more publics to the bird research and more about knowing about birds. Anna showed that her website. Please look at that website and subscribe. It will be very useful if you're keen to know more about birds and aging. And also the ringing station visits from the local children are very encouraging for the public awareness issues. Like it's very keen educational tool to attract more young ornithologists. Also, it's a very nice experience for those kids who visit the ringing stations to see close by birds. Also, that bird ringing not only for also birds, it's also very good surveillance methods about collecting other samples, like here's ectoparasite samples from the Professor Chang Yong Choi's laboratory. And in Korea, there is the Seoul National University team initiated the MOTOS tracking system, which is a small nanotag about less than 1 gram, which is the signaling the present substance of the birds to the receiver station, which is very state-of-art technology for the Asian ornithology, I would say. And it can be recorded if the birds are still present around the 10 kilometer radius, then we can see that birds are still okay. Then when the departure rate will be stop the signaling, then we can say how long they stayed like that. Permissions. If you see this usage of the technology, like in North America, it's more than 2,000 towers receiving stations, like ringing stations working like that. But in Asia, only South Korea so far. Therefore, we need to use this kind of technology more wisely, more widely. To sum up, we need to develop regional and international schemes for bird ringing to expand the bird ringing stations across the Asia. Even though our recapture percentage is low, that's for we need to promote more network building. Ringing as an educational tool. Also, the ringing is also very good hotspot of bird watching, which is also another view of the ringing stations. That's the education tool and promote bird watching and the bird ringing activities. And the cooperation among the organizations and the ringing stations to exchange the information and the regular training for the ringers. What has happened in Cambodia and Thailand the last early March, and collaborate opportunities among the universities and the research institutes to expand the network and systematically standardize the collection of management of banding information. Then ringing is a science. We should develop more about the resident or breeding bird surveys using ringing schemes. The usage of state of like PAM, passive acoustic monitoring, and MOTOS for future ringing stations to combine those technologies. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Batmonk. So next we have a presentation from Min Ren, but she could not be with us today because of the time difference. So I will play a video of her presentation. If you have any problem seeing it or hearing it, just let me know. Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Xiaotong Ren from Princeton University. You could also call me Mint. I'm currently doing my PhD here with a focus on migratory landbirds in Asia. It is my great honor to attend this webinar. Thanks so much for organizing such a Landbird webinar to have researchers from different parts of the flyway coming together to have discussions on conserving migratory landbirds in Asia. Sorry that I could not attend the webinar in person because of time difference, so I provided this recording for the webinar. But if you have any questions or thoughts after listening to my presentation, please feel free to reach out to us. I have put our email address at the bottom right corner on this slide and the last slide. Today, I would like to share some studies and perspectives that we have synthesized from a symposium at the second Asian Ornithological Conference about the challenges and chances for conserving migratory landbirds in Asia. As we all know, Asian region is the one with the most diverse migratory landbird species globally. The East Asian flyway alone supports more than 1/3 of the migratory landbird species. But comparing to the other major flyways around the world, the flyways in Asia remain the least known because of lack of monitoring and studies. We know so little about the distribution, population trend, and migration ecology of these migratory landbirds. Our poor knowledge of the Asian migratory landbirds might hinder our ability to identify the threats to those populations and our ability to conserve them successfully. But we are also seeing the emergence of new studies underway in recent years. Our knowledge of migratory landbirds along the flyway has gradually improved. Some flyway-specific characteristics and threats have been further highlighted in recent years. Right now, there is growing concern and awareness regarding the population decline of East Asian migratory landbirds. Although there are also news of growing population in some of the places, given the poor knowledge base along the flyway for migratory landbirds, it is hard to determine the real population trend for most of the species. We have those birds that are threatened right now. But will there be more threatened ones in fact? Moreover, the same species might have different populations, just as this map of different populations of yellow-breasted bunting reviewed by the tracking studies conducted by Wayland and his colleague here shows. For different populations of the same or different species, which population and which route is under higher anthropogenic pressure, which one is at higher risk of population decline, we still have little knowledge about these. Corresponding to the poor understanding of populations and routes, it is also difficult for us to figure out the potential different threats to them. Although we still have little knowledge on a lot of aspects of Asian migratory landbirds, we do know that migratory landbirds here are facing lots of threats, and the three major ones including hunting, habitat change, and climate change. For certain focal species such as yellow-breasted bunting, there are some studies looking at the impact of hunting pressure towards them. For habitat change, it is not easy to study the impact of it on certain populations. But as you can see on this human footprint map, Asian region is the one with the most human activities around the world. Therefore, habitat change and loss would sure be an important factor contributing to population decline of Asian migratory landbirds. Although very few studies were conducted in Asia about the impact of climate change on migratory landbirds, studies in other parts of the world have already proven that the mismatch of food resources and arrival time of migratory landbirds caused by climate change would have large impact on bird populations. There are also other anthropogenic impacts on migratory landbirds, such as pollutants and light pollution. In order to have a better understanding of the potential threats towards the Asian migratory landbirds, we convened a symposium at the second Asian Ornithological Congress last November to provide an opportunity for researchers from all over Asia focusing on different threats to come together and present their work. The symposium was firstly proposed by Wayland, and our goal was to focus on Asian tracking studies that link to anthropogenic pressures. Luckily, we had 8 brilliant researchers at the end from different parts of the flyway focusing on different threats to the migratory landbirds. Because of the time limit, today I would like to share the major conclusion of some of the studies presented at the symposium with you. First, for the study I conducted about the non-breeding habitat change of migratory land birds in China in the past 35 years, we calculated the annual rate of change of non-breeding habitat for each species. The solid black line here can be viewed as the x-axis for this figure. Anything outside the solid black circle means the habitat is increasing. Anything inside the black circle indicates decreasing habitat area. The different colors for habitat areas means different type of habitat. Dark green is forest, yellow is grassland, and orange is cropland. The gray circles inside and outside the black circle could give you a sense where 1% annual change is. The gray segments inside the circle grouped all the birds by their predominant habitat. Based on this result, we found that the forest habitat change for some species were decreasing, while for some other species, their forest habitat was increasing. This trend is the same for cropland habitat. However, grasslands seem to be the most worrying habitat. Most of the species have decreasing trend in their grassland habitat. The other very important thing to be noticed on this figure is that all the birds with pictures here are the ones listed as threatened on IUCN Red List. Despite we could see significant net loss of habitat for more than half of the species in our analysis, only a small fraction of birds were listed as threatened. Some of the unlisted birds were in fact experiencing much more severe habitat change than the listed ones. To get a better picture of the performance of different groups of birds with different predominant habitats, we summed the total non-breeding area of habitat change for each species. On this figure, the x-axis are different groups of birds, and the y-axis is the annual change rate of non-breeding area of habitat. So we found that only the urban birds have a positive median number for annual rate of non-breeding habitat change, while all the others have negative median values. The grassland birds were experiencing the most dramatic declines in non-breeding area of habitat. In Dr. Kitazawa's presentation, he shared the status of open land migratory species in Japan, especially focusing on critical situation of brown shrike. The middle map here is based on their literature review, which shows the historical distribution of brown shrike, while the map on the right panel shows the current distribution of brown shrike, suggesting a contraction of over 90% in breeding range within the past century for breeding brown shrike in Japan. Dr. Ma and her colleagues conducted a study on mercury and migratory songbirds, taking Siberian ruby-throat as an example. They measured mercury distribution in 5 populations of Siberian ruby-throat and evaluate the potential impact of mercury for those ruby-throats. They found that mercury in those birds' feathers are different for different populations. Moreover, even the birds originating from uncontaminated areas can quickly become impaired on flight performance if they refuel at a highly contaminated stopover site. In Qinghai population, only age effect was found. They also found that mercury does not contribute to apparent survival, but it could affect breeding performance. Because of the large differences between populations, further studies are needed to investigating why mercury is elevated in Baikal and Qinghai population. Ding Li and his colleagues conducted desk-based reviews alongside a large-scale survey in both field and markets in 7 different countries in Southeast Asia to address bird hunting issue in the region. They found more than 500 species affected by hunting and trapping in Southeast Asia. And people are consuming wildlife in Southeast Asia mainly for wild meat trade and domestic consumption. As you can see in those 2 pictures, lots of mist nets were set in agricultural landscapes for hunting birds. But there are very little monitoring in those kind of habitat. This is a map showing the results of a mist net survey conducted by Rong Rong in Thailand. You can see a lot of mist net here. Because of easy availability and wide use of mist nets in many parts of Southeast Asia, the regulation of it would be very important in protecting bird populations. To successfully address the hunting issue, stronger government actions are needed in most Southeast Asian countries, along with local engagements. The last study I would like to share today was conducted by Citizen Science Research Team led by Zhi Jian from Sun Yat-sen University. They did a national bird market survey involving more than 200 pet bird markets across over 100 cities in China. They found that among 375 traded native wild birds, about 45% are migratory or partial migratory species, accounting for 34% of the total abundance. And these migratory birds were traded all over their distribution ranges, from breeding grounds to the non-breeding grounds, and some are even further beyond their distribution range. Both the amount and distribution of traded migratory birds are shocking to know. Other than the potential threats to migratory land birds investigated by different studies in the symposium, we also discussed about the challenges and chances for conserving Asian migratory birds. But we could not name all of them, so we just share a few here for discussions. Firstly, we still lack enough data for evaluating the virus population trends and threats in the region. However, more and more citizen science data are emerging in countries like China and India. They are contributing to a better understanding of the populations. Tracking studies are also providing us with migration ecology of migratory land bird species that we had no idea before. Korea has just set the first Motus antenna in the flyway, which might help us get better understanding of the migration routes of a lot of small body-sized birds. The number of bird banding stations is also growing these years. More importantly, breeding schemes such as constant effort size in Japan are leading a good trend towards better understanding of the vital rates for those migratory land birds. Some countries have already had their monitoring program for breeding populations of migratory land birds. And China is starting its breeding population monitoring program in recent years as well. Secondly, although intense human activities exist in the region, the issues such as hunting using mist nets are aware of and just started to get addressed in some regions. Moreover, there are so many countries along the flyway, which makes the collaborations to conserve those migratory land birds even harder. But more and more efforts are put into coordinating on banding scheme, With the platform like today's webinar and the Asian Ornithological Conferences, researchers from different parts of the flyway could communicate with each other to share their studies and thoughts. Hopefully, the establishment of Asian Ornithological Alliance could help with facilitating more collaborations along the flyway in the future. For the species with special concern, single species action plan could be developed as the one for yellow-breasted bunting. This could also contribute to solving the problem of the lack of standardized schemes. It is also true for bird banding activities. Last but not least, we still lack policies for conserving migratory land birds in Asia. We do not have a partnership for migratory land birds along the flyway as the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership for Migratory Water Birds. But people from different countries are gathering with each other to tackle the issues such as misnet. We are looking forward to seeing more in the future. Thank you so much for listening. We hope that these could spark some thoughts and discussions on the challenges and chances of conserving Asian migratory land birds. We are more than happy to discuss and work with all of you together to better conserve the migratory land birds in Asia. I apologize again for not being able to attend the webinar in person, but feel free to contact us through email. Thank you. Hope we could meet each other soon anywhere along the flyway.
Okay, so thank you, Mint, for that. If you have any questions for her, just reach out at her email. And our final presentation is going to be from Vicky, who also can't make it. So I will play her presentation, and it will be on the results of the bunting count. Just give me one moment. Okay, hopefully you can all see that. If there's a problem, just let me know.
Hello everyone, my name is Vicky, coordinator of the bunting count. This season is the 6th bunting count since 2019, so today I'm going to share with you a summary of the past 5 bunting counts. Here is a very brief background of bunting count in case some of you are not familiar with it. The first bunting count began in October 2019. Every bunting count starts from October and finishes in April next year. This covers autumn and spring migration and also wintering of buntings. We have set 6 target species, which are the black-faced bunting, chestnut bunting, chestnut-eared bunting, ditto bunting, rustic bunting, and the yellow-breasted bunting. Asian countries that are either stopover site or wintering grounds for buntings are liaised to participate. Since we would like to get as much bunting data as possible, so participating countries gather all birding sightings, and some of them conduct field surveys too. Since 2022 to 23, we began to promote submission of bunting records through eBird. Let me use this slide to talk a little bit about eBird. We have officially requested and granted the right to use data of the 6 target buntings. During September 2020 to April 2024, there are over 31,200 checklists covering 13 countries or regions. This number is only for the 6 bunting species, so you can imagine the potential of eBird. Our eBird ID is HKBWS Landbird, with a space in between. If you have bunting records, please share your bird list with us. During the past 5 years, we see changes, and the bunting count is slightly and slowly evolving. We have more participating countries and regions. Data collection from mainly rely on field survey to now a hybrid mode, which includes both field survey and eBird. The data quantity and quality also increased and improved. This picture is a slide that I used in my presentation about the results of yellow-breasted bunting in the first bunting count 2 years ago. At that time, I mentioned that we need to collect data from every country through a standardized period of time. And you can see after 4 years, in 2023 to 24, we achieved it in certain degree. This is a combination of data from both field survey and eBird. Some countries that are not yet our bunting count partner, such as Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, we still have some eBird data from them. Please don't focus on the high total number. This is what I don't want to mention about that, because I want to show you that the information gap is so huge that in previous slide, we have so few data. So the number is very low. And now we see the number is much more than that. But we are still filling the gap. We have more achievement in the past 5 years. Our partners have identified several important roosting sites for yellow-breasted bunting. Public awareness and participation has increased a lot. Thank you for all your great effort. And lastly, we have a strong partnership. However, we cannot stop at this point. The bunting count is yet to be perfect, and we still have a long way to go. I think this is a very good opportunity for us to discuss how and which way we should go. It is worth, and we must continue the bunting count. Both field survey and birding submission are important. One can provide high quality data for in-depth monitoring, while the other provide data with wider coverage and as a tool for public education. The two methods seem supporting each other, but at this moment, both ways are not mature enough to make our bunting count a robust monitoring program. Both of them need more resources and support and time to develop. Involvement and cooperation from all partners is crucial too. It is a monitoring program that relates to many Asian countries. We have to develop a program that every country is willing to follow and able to follow and on the same pace as well. Lastly, this is what I mentioned in my presentation about 2 years ago, that I wish we could figure out the date when the first bird of the season arrive or observed in your country, the peak migration or wintering time period, as well as the distribution in your country. I think we have some idea now, but not confident to give a clear answer. Let's make this our assignment for the coming year. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Vicky. And I'm sure if you have any questions for her, also feel free to reach out to her. So that's the end of our presentations. So I think I'll hand back to you, Simba, for Q&A.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, Anna, and also thank you. Well, I would like to thank all the speakers. I think these are actually very wonderful presentations, and you know that many of those are summarizing the symposiums at the Asian Ornithological Conference last year. Because we understand that many of you did not have the chance to attend the meeting, so we make a brief report on this, and also we would just like to talk about, discuss with you, is because we are not just going there to the conference to make presentations. We all have some kind of common goal and aim. We want to do something. That's the reason why that we have the roundtable discussion, and that's why that we also would like to have some discussion at this webinar held today. But first of all, because after all the presentations, maybe some of you at the audience will have some questions, and I would like to know who has questions, and please either you fill it in the chat box or you just raise your hand. Let us know that you have questions. I just wonder if people could open, if they have a camera, can they open up the can they just open up the video camera so that we can see you? So are there any questions or comments on the presentations before we start the discussion in our section? No questions? Or maybe would like to ask, Olivia, you actually from the CMS, you have lots of experience in the Landbird in in other parts of the world, in the Western Palearctic and also Africa, and can you just also explain about what is actually being done on the Landbird? I know that there is a Landbird action plan there. Can you just briefly tell us what has been done, and maybe that will be something that we can learn from your experience?
Well, thank you. That's a real long story about the landbirds in the African Eurasian region. It is an action plan. An action plan for more than 500 species of landbirds. So it's really a big thing. But first of all, what I would like to say here, I am fantastically amazed of all that is happening in the Asian part concerning landbirds, and also in particular buntings. Especially the last presentation on the 6 species of buntings, that was very interesting, and I'm happy to see that so much is going on, and that you are organizing and coordinating such a lot of work on landbirds and migratory landbirds. And of course, I missed the Asian Ornithological Conference, which obviously was full also of very important contributions to this study. But of course, if I want to speak about the CMS action plan on landbirds for the African Eurasian region, I can just say that we have started with this action plan in 2012. That was a meeting in West Africa. We developed that action plan during that 3 days meeting there. It was adopted by the Convention on Migratory Species in 2014. And since then, we have made all sorts of efforts to implement this action plan, which was very difficult because mainly lack of of implementation through the members, through the parties to the Convention on Migratory Species, and of course, as usual, due to the lack of money. But we are presently revisiting the program of work that is presented at every conference of the parties meeting of the CMS every 3 years, that helps us implement the action plan. We have a program of work on a wide plan of actions concerning habitat, concerning species, concerning threats, and so on. And we are now revisiting this program of work, which will be again presented at the next conference of the parties in 2026, when it will take place. That would be the 15th conference of the parties of the CMS. So I'm happy to help with all sorts of information if you need. If you have special questions, I'm here to answer these questions, but I don't want to take too much time from the discussion. You can also contact me through email if you have special questions, and I will be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And particularly, also thank you for joining the Zoom meeting. Last week when we will have the meeting in Thailand. I think that the reason why that I want to organize this webinar is I want to get more Asian participants will have their comments on this, because, as you said, at the moment we do not have a good coordinating body on land birds in Asia. We just something like a project based, like for example, that I work with some researchers in Thailand, in Myanmar, in Nepal to put together a workshop on the yellow-breasted bunting. I work very closely. I work with the Japan Bird Research Association, working very closely with the Hong Kong Bird Society, and we want to initiate something. And also Hong Kong Bird Society also work with BirdLife, with the Nature Life Cambodia and other partners for the work in Cambodia. But that is not linked up and not very well organized. I think that if we can have a structure, just like I said, like the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership, that will be good, much better for people to get together, and also for getting more support and funding like this, because I think that for most of the organization like here in Asia, we are also struggling with funding and other thing. And we have been talking about how about if we can standardizing the bird banding, promoting the bird banding in Asia, but so far still with very little progress. The countries in Northern Asia, like Japan, Korea, China, Russia, Mongolia, they have their own banding scheme. But in Southern Asia, not many countries have their own banding scheme. I know recently Thailand has established one, and also the Thailand banders, and also very keen to support other neighboring countries like for example, Myanmar and Cambodia to help. So that's the reason why that we are actually trying to discuss more about how we can actually form a better network. I see that Olivia, you raised your hand. You please go ahead and then comment on this.
Yes, you just mentioned the East Asian Australasian Flyway, which actually truly is mainly about waterbirds. But you may have heard that the CMS, the Convention on Migratory Species, has a flyway working group that is worldwide. That is, encompassing all the flyways of the world. And one of the suggestions was when we had our last meeting not long ago was to ask the East Asian Australasian flyway to also incorporate terrestrial birds and widen its scope, taxonomic scope to include also land birds. And I very much hope that this will go into this direction. But I must say, you and all these organizations, like also the Hong Kong Bird Watching Society and all the others, and going back to the meeting that was recently held on monitoring of winter counts of yellow-breasted buntings in Thailand. All this shows to me that there is a lot of coordination already done. And you, Simba, you have been very instrumental in organizing this monitoring. I think you are on really the good track. But if the East Asian Australasian flyway was to be widened to include land birds, that would be a fantastic thing. Thank you.
Olivia, that this is actually our we have the plan like this. We have been trying to discuss with the Secretariat on this matter that the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership originally it was developed from the Asian Pacific Migratory Water Bird Conservation Strategy. And that was back in the 1990s. Prehistoric thing. I mean the Stone Age. The time. But in 2006, we convinced them to include seabirds. So we now also covering seabirds. And in the last few years, we are trying to discuss about the including landbird. That means all migratory birds in there. And what I actually didn't know was the CMS Flyway working group has actually contact them. Maybe after that I would discuss more with you, because I know some of the organizations and governments in Asia, in Eastern Asia, they also interest to have the land bird included. As I said, if we develop two different secretariat bodies, it's a waste of resource. I mean that you may have a very similar people joining all these meetings. So why not just put them all into one big one secretariat. I see that someone is actually raising the questions. Can you just turn on the can you just turn on your camera and mic? We just want to hear your from you, Mr. Chi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I hope it's not too loud here. First, I'm from Taiwan, and just sharing some new findings from Taiwan. Currently we found the population of some wintering land bird decreased significantly in the last decade using citizen science data. So as the presentation has mentioned before, most of the decreasing species are open habitat species. In Taiwan, we found like red-throated pipit, red-throated pipit, brown shrike, and Siberian ruby throat has decreased in the last decade. And moreover, we found some forest species like eyebrow thrush and olive-back pipit are decreasing too. So this is new, and we are currently working on the analysis to find the potential threats on our regional scale. Okay, that's my sharing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I also know that, well, in Taiwan, you have developed a very good bird monitoring system that I think that, we can actually, encourage sharing of this kind of information along the flyway. I think that will be very useful. Thank you very much for your contribution and comment.
Thank you.
I also just wanted to make a comment, which sort of relates back to what we were talking about earlier with bird banding across the region. And what I sort of find at the moment is that we're doing really good at sort of expanding bird banding in areas in countries where there's already some sort of scheme, like Thailand, for example, and of course in Hong Kong and in Mongolia. But I wonder if there's anything that we can do for the teams in countries where there has been no scheme set up at all. They're working from ground zero. And I think that is maybe a challenge for the teams who don't know how to really begin from nothing. And if there's a way that we can share our experiences with them.
From this, I know that some countries, I believe, in some way, I think Japan had done it many years ago, and also Korea and China, to some extent, they also are trying to support some of the countries in Southeast Asia to develop bird banding scheme. I think that the reason why for some countries, of course, setting up a bird banding scheme will need to have lots of training, and also the national government should think this is something worth doing. In fact, it is not a very big finance burden, but we have to convince them this is something that they should do. So that's the reason why I was thinking about regional structure that with the government join something similar to some bilateral agreement on the migratory bird conservation, or multilateral agreement, because bilateral agreement in Asia, in Northern Asia is pretty well covered, because most of the countries like Japan, South Korea, China, and Russia have their own migratory bird agreement. But we found a very big gap in Southeast Asia. The Southeast Asian country seem like they do not have a good mechanism of multinational cooperation in migratory bird conservation, and I think also very important is they should also link up with the northern countries, because many of their migratory birds actually come from the north, like many shorebirds, many land birds. And that's the reason why I'm thinking about a body like similar to the East Asian or Southeast private partnership would be very useful. But I know that there are many people from Southeast Asia here. Can we have your comment on how to develop like your wish and how you think you can develop your banding scheme in your country? I think there are people from Myanmar, Cambodia, Thailand, and other countries here. Anybody want to comment on this? Oh, yes, please.
Hello. Namaste. My name is Hembahadur Katwa. I'm from Nepal, but currently I'm working in China, Sisangbanna. So I mostly work on the farmland birds. I'm also working with the Krishna on the yellow-breasted bunting as well. So typically, now I'm working on the farmland bird system since 2018. I'm continuously monitoring farmland birds. That's both migratory birds and the resident birds in 100 transects in lowland Nepal. So I have not analyzed all the data, but it shows that many migratory birds use these agricultural lands. And I'm also reviewing the farmland birds in Nepal, and it shows that more than 70% of the overall bird species found in Nepal use agricultural lands. So it shows that agricultural land is one of the most important sites for the birds in Nepal. And it also shows that around 40% of those bird species that migrate in the Central Asian flyway use agricultural lands of the Nepal. So it is one of the important sites. So I'm just monitoring that part. And the next thing I just want to say that bird ringing, we want to do bird ringing, but it's very difficult in our country, as you already mentioned that there is a government issues that it is not easy to get permission for the tagging or the ringing of the bird. So this is one of the limitations that still we are not able to do ringing on the birds, but still we are monitoring the diversity or richness or abundance in different types of the agricultural land. So I just want to update these things to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I would just also think at the moment, as you said that, it's difficult to get a permission from the government for the bringing. If there is some bigger multilateral or body can discuss with your government and convince them the importance of study of migratory birds, maybe, and also with some, of course, with maybe some technical support, like teach people how to ring birds and things. I think that maybe gradually, slowly, they will start a bird banding scheme. This is what I would think, and this is what we think. We would really like to have something like something almost like a union of all the banders and banding organizations along the flyway in Asia. I think that is also probably the reason why that Winland and Tian Hao and our colleagues have that symposium at the Asian Ornithological Conference. We want to have more discussion, and then we can find out how we can actually proceed in improving the situation of getting more bird banding schemes in Asian countries. And also, as you said, you have started to do some line transect of monitoring of birds in the farm, and that's good. But you know that this is we really need to have some organization, some people actually setting up as a scheme, because it takes time. Monitoring, one thing is rather frustrating is it may take years for you to see the trend, and people may think that this is boring, may not be really useful, but we definitely need to convince people that now we have an issue like we believe many land birds, many smaller birds are declining, but we do not have the data. We don't know which species suffer the most, which species is stable, unless we have a very good monitoring scheme. But this is also something we need to convince a lot of institutions and government that we need to start doing this. And as just like Mr. G from Taiwan said, they have established a good bird monitoring system. I think the more probably 10 or 20 years, and now they are seeing some changes. What they are now confidently said which species likely to be declining, and what are the and that is the beginning of us to plan for more. Conservation measures and planning in the region. Actually, it's good for the country and also good for all along the flyway.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So you are now based in Xishuangbanna in Yunnan,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
Is this for a study?
Yeah, no, I'm just working here as an assistant professor. Yeah, so
okay. You're just working there. Okay, that's also good, because that is also probably a good site to to work. And I also hope maybe you can also work closer with your Chinese colleagues to develop some more work, like maybe in the future some cooperation between China and Nepal on
Yes.
monitoring and banding.
Yes, of course. I'm trying for that. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I actually had just a quick question based off of what Simba was saying. Do you know exactly what it is that makes the government not want to give these permissions? Is it maybe the ethics or the lack of trainers, or do you know what their mindset is when it comes to bird ringing?
I think in case of the Nepal, that it's usually like the traditional issues like that, because in most of the people, birds people usually consider birds as the traditional part, and if we toss their birds, or if we capture the birds, and if we observe any nest like that, then they will leave that kind of these nest, or they will die like that. So I think this is one of the traditional issues. One thing is that, and another thing is that we don't prioritize bird studies more, because our most of the works are related to the large mammal species. So we ignore the birds and other taxa. So these are the two most important things, I think.
Yes, Ham, you actually had raised a very important issue for us who are working on land birds, because for most people, rather old school. For conservation, they will look at mostly they focus on bigger birds, bigger water birds like cranes, like swans, geese, eagles, and for mammals, they look at things like big animals like rhino, like tiger, like elephant. But a lot of time, if you talk to them, there's a species of rodent or a shrew is also very important. People think that they are not really attractive, not very important, or just like landbird. These are all looks like sparrows to me. So that's the reason why we would like to convince more people that now it is the smaller things are now really in trouble. So we really need to do work more, and I think it takes time for us to change people's mindset. But I think that we are slowly doing this, and that's the reason why we have more webinars, symposium, like saying that now for example, in Japan, the species decline the most is it's not the cranes, it's not the eagles, because they are recovering, and in fact they are slowly recovering. It's the yellow-breasted bunting, it's the brown stripe, and these are the birds that are declining. So we are now working more to also to convince the public, and it takes time. I think that we need to convince people that some species now we actually have many successful story on bigger animals and birds, but now it's more challenging that we have to work on the smaller species that is also facing a lot of problem, and in fact they are more, I think maybe they are more important because they are closer to us, living closer to us. They're serving better as an indicator of what actually is going wrong with the environment. Are there anybody from Southeast Asia would like to comment on this question, or have any questions on about the speakers, about the presentations?
Can I share about that?
Yeah. Yes, Min. Yeah, please.
Yes, I want to share yellow-breasted bunting about in Myanmar news side. And my name is Min So. I'm from Myanmar. Currently, I'm working the yellow-breasted bunting survey in Southern Shan State, collaborating with the Kim University Conservation Ecology in Thailand. This project is still ongoing project. During the 5 months, in this area, I found the yellow-breasted bunting over 30,000. And this area is one of the important area in Myanmar. but like international already declare this is very important for but I didn't found in the yellow-breasted bunny species this how to organize. Actually, I don't know for that, but area they declare to this area is the important for the Sarah cranes and red spotted eagle. But unfortunately, during this 5 years, I detect one only Sarah crane that will be very short and disappear in this area for the Sarah crane. And then I didn't detect any red spotted eagle in this area, maybe eastern or something like that. But we found a lot of bandy in there, and then I found that 2 more bandy species, black-headed bandy and crested bandy. Black-headed bandy is very, very rare to see in Myanmar. I had luckily got photo record and store evidence for this area. But how we can construct for the only one left, the Sarah green, that is currently I have no idea because of very difficult to educate in that area. Many people is the one kind of Shan people, they don't interesting the conservation and they don't know about all of our bird. I'm just trying to contact the chairman or something like that. This most are not okay. Most of the villagers they don't want to listen and they don't want to give for the time. They are very busy in their farm or their cultivation. But I'm trying to village approach to the educate and some of the school. I request to the teacher and I share some knowledge already. But this data report I will be finished another May. I will share everybody and how to improve this area for long-term survival for our bandits and other number species. Please give me some good idea or everybody give me. Thank you.
First of all, Min Min, I really admire your work there because we know that in many places, in most places in Asia, it all started up like this. People are not interested in conservation at all. It is because now you can see that in many places, like in Thailand, in places in China, people are now getting more. More people come up for the conservation work is because of all those education and all those things. People who talk to them and showing them some example, and people like you actually work as a pioneer. Well, to work with them, and definitely if possible, I would like to continue to support your work, and also with that's the reason why we would like to ask for more. People, the like-minded people get together and see that we can get more resources to support. And also we have to identify what are the issues. That's the reason why we need to have some plans, like action plans. Or what are the important issues? What are the things need to be done, and then have them implemented. That is something very you actually raise a very important issue, but I would believe as we slowly work on this, maybe 10 years later, 20 years later, you're looking back, you find that the things are gradually solved, and people are getting are not as indifferent to wildlife conservation as before. But it takes time in most countries that we are starting to do work like this. And that's the reason why we would like to raise these issues. For Landbird issue, I remember one thing is when we first discussed about this, when I still work for BirdLife and international thing, when we first discussed about this, it was back in the 1990s. And people just feel powerless because say that, how can we do the Landbird thing? Because people are not interested. You do the monitoring. It's unlike water birds. Landbird monitoring, you need more people engaged. At that time, there were not that many bird watchers in Asia. So it's just simply too difficult, too big. The scope is. So that's the reason why when we have the crisis of yellow-breasted bunting, we focus on the yellow-breasted bunting first, and then slowly expand to buntings, keep the scope smaller, and get more people interest and get more actions done, and gradually we are expanding to other species. Like we are now yellow-breasted bunting, grassland, farmland species. We may actually include the stripes. And slowly we can actually expanding through the discussion with other Asian colleagues. What are the important species, important scope that we should deal with, and that's the reason why we need to have a bigger well coordinated body to plan for all this work. And in fact, all your work now, people I know that there are many people working in different parts of Asia. They're all doing some really brilliant work. So I hope that we can slowly join all them together and make a big joint force. Then we can actually achieve much better on the conservation of land birds. And in fact, you see the background, the background of my
Yes.
is the roosting site in Thailand. It's near Kong Cam, and we were talking about whether we can save the place. I would say that as I suggest to my Thai friend, is maybe it is not very practical to say that declare is a protected area, because the bunting may shift. Yeah. So we should think about how we can actually work with the local community on a sustainable way of working with the local farmer and conserving bunting. This is exactly what a few days ago, I pasted a news on Facebook that in Hong Kong also they are now working on how to work with the farmers to conserve the land for long-term sustainable conservation of farmland species. I think that this is actually can be slowly done in many places in Asia. So that is something that we also have to think about. Not just as a protected area, but how we can actually manage the site and feel and work with the local community. Sorry, Mimin, I heard that you want to say something, right?
No, it's okay. Thank you, Simba.
Any other comments? You can make it slow, or you can actually type it on the chat box. I understand that in Asia, when we have a meeting like this, we have to use English, because there's too many different languages in Asia that we cannot just choose one of the national languages. But when we use English, people tend to be a little bit slow, or people may be shy to talk. So don't be shy. You can talk slowly, and that we can still understand what you want. Or if you are not confident enough to talk, you can just type on the chat box, and maybe we can actually also communicate by writing, or later by email and other things. Any other comments and questions, suggestions? Or you think there is some other species of land birds also flattening? Well, maybe you can actually raise this question. It's very quiet. We still have another 40 minutes for discussion. Oh, Olivia. Yes.
You need to unmute yourself.
Unmute.
I don't want to monopolize the discussion, but maybe coming back to just what you say, the picture behind you, Simba, and places like that in agricultural areas where, as you say, um, uh, protecting the area is maybe not the best thing to do, as birds like the yellow-breasted bunting will shift to places where they find food, where they find a good shelter. So in this case, a dialogue is important between conservation people and people who actually use the land. And what sort of possibilities do you have in Japan, in Thailand, in Cambodia to get this dialogue between land users and conservationists? That would be interesting to have information on this issue. Thank you.
I think, well, in Japan, I think that about more than 20 years ago, I think that 20 or, well, even maybe even 30. Well, the conservationists in Japan has actually have have an initiative called Satoyama Initiative. That is the countryside. You preserve the original, well, ecosystem of the countryside. That will actually be also be beneficial to the people, to the farmers, and that, well, I think that you need a lot of good dialogue between the people who do the education and understand the environment with them, and also I think that with more publications and even the farmers, they may actually get those message from the media, like from newspaper, like from television, and when you talk to them, and then you gradually get their support, and of course sometimes in some countries maybe government subsidy will be important. Or I know that in some places, I am not familiar with Hong Kong now, although I'm from Hong Kong. But many years ago, you usually you give some compensation to the farmers, and they will allow some kind of activity there, because at that time many people think that farming is actually on the way out in Hong Kong. Not the younger people are not interested in farming, something like that, and it will be easy. So, but nowadays, I think it has changed to the mindset that some younger people are interested in farming, but they also have the idea about the environment and conservation and things, and that will actually I think it will make it easier to have that kind of dialogue, and people will think that that is the way you can live a very environmentally friendly lifestyle. You're living close to nature, you have your own farmland, and at the same time you are also friendly to the environment. But it takes time. You know that when you talk about something like that 30 or 40 years ago, the older farmer will think that you are crazy. Yeah, they would not really think that this is the way, but people may change, and then you will say, okay, people may change. Okay, I see that somebody from Cambodia has a question. Please, can you just turn on maybe your camera and your microphone? Let's see.
Sanford, can you turn on your microphone?
Can you turn on your microphone? Semforce, NLC. Oh, I see that you have written there. Your question there. Oh, can you turn on your mic?
I think we cannot for now.
Oh, I will read your question. Okay. He said that, well, hello, I'm from Cambodia. Oh, don't worry, you're outside. Okay, I can read your question and then then discuss with you. And you say that you say hello, I'm from Cambodia. I have questions regarding the roost selection of yellow-breasted bunting. Do yellow-breasted bunting always shift their roost, or do they stay in the same location? Somebody talking about? Oh. They stay in the same location throughout the entire wintering migration in one area. I am currently observing roost shifting in white yellow-breasted bunting, where they have from one location to another. At present, at least 2 different roosts are being used by different groups of yellow-breasted bunting. You have actually raised a very interesting question, which we probably still do not have an answer. We believe, because that's the reason why studying, monitoring wintering bird is not as easy as monitoring breeding birds, because for breeding birds, at least we know that they are not moving around in during the breeding time when they are nesting. But wintering birds, they might actually shift their site depending on food and other resources or disturbance. It depends on really dependent on the local situation. So, in my understanding, is some of the yellow-breasted bunting sites, they are pretty, stable, probably because of good food, abundance of food, and also not a lot of disturbance. That's the reason why they stay there every year. But some sites, maybe they will be shifting. I think that all bird watchers will know sometimes some birds will shift away because of disturbance or because of lack of food or not, and other resources. And that is something that we still need to have a good study. And that's the reason why we talk about the yellow-breasted bunting. A lot of things we still not sure. We do not know, but we hope that our work can initiate some more study on the yellow-breasted bunting, like in the wintering ground, and then we will know more about whether they are faithful to a site or they will be shifting. And that is, unfortunately, this is a question I cannot answer you now, because I think it would depend on the situation of the site, like whether it is suitable site with enough food, whether it's a good site free of disturbance. If the site is good, but there's a lot of disturbance, but the birds will also not staying there. So that so that is something we still need to work on. And just tell you one thing, that even from my experience, I am also working with some colleagues. We are studying about the winter roost of some birds, like the great starling in Japan. There is roost not far away from where I live, but that is the roost probably also moving. Some of my colleagues said that is a roost moving away from moving from some places about 5 kilometers from where I stay. So this is something that we are still we are still studying, and maybe that will be totally dependent on whether the birds think that they are suitable habitat, or there were or disturbance or other things. So it is more complicated for wintering birds, I would think, and that's the reason why, as I said, if there is a roost of yellow-breasted bunting in an area, maybe designation of protected area is not the best way to save them, because if they are moving around, you will have to designate many protected area. So that's the reason why that a better land planning management, working with the local people, there will be no hunting, there will be less disturbance, and that will be a better way of conserving them in the wintering area. Is it okay with your questions? We still don't know much about the yellow-breasted bunting, and in fact, we surprisingly, yellow-breasted bunting was really abundant bird, well, about 40 years ago. Yeah, that was you look at all the literatures. Well, they are migrating in thousands or tens of thousands. Surprisingly, well, because when I actually compiling the action plan for this species, and when we try to look for this for information, that's why I said surprisingly, not many people actually have studied yellow-breasted bunting. Most of the paper that I got at that time for compiling the information were from Russia. Some Russian scientists have studied them, but not many other places have a very detailed study of the yellow-breasted bunting. Probably because people think that it's a very common bird. So just like people are not interested to study things like swinhoe's white eye, that is too common. But that means we should know a lot of them because they're common, but not many people really seriously study them. So that's the reason why we want to start more study of the landbirds.
I wanted to ask,
Yes.
so I think that with this question of the birds moving winter roosts, I feel like quite a maybe not simple, but a way to study this would be through bird ringing and coloring, which we already have the coordinated colorings in several countries. And I wonder if they've noticed if they've done this in Thailand and if they've noticed anything from that.
I think the team of the Kong University, they are working on this. I'm not sure whether they are still here. I heard, but I see that there some of them are still at here at the beginning, but I know they are busy today. Um, they are starting to do this, but I think it's too early to have the conclusion. I think that you probably remember Boquet, the girl, the student. She is actually also we start to working on this in Thailand. But I think it's too early to say that they have any conclusion. They are also doing something like color banding, like the telemetry of the of the birds checking their location. But I think it's still it is still an early stage to have any conclusion about this. But I'm really looking forward to the study in a few years' time so that we will know more about the yellow-breasted man. And I also have encouraged many other countries like maybe Cambodia, China, or Myanmar, Mongolia. The more people study the yellow-breasted bunting, then we will probably know more about their behavior. Like for example, when Vinland had put the geolocator on the yellow-breasted bunting in the Amur region, he found that they actually stay in northern China for about a month, if my memory is correct about his paper. That means the birds are actually molding in parts of the northern China, and those areas are also very important, and that is probably also solve the one question is why there is a lot of poaching. There were a lot of poaching of yellow-breasted bunting in northern China. It's because probably the birds are actually staying in the near those places for molting. They are not, they will be staying there for quite some time, so the hunters know that these birds were pleasant. So I think that actually also reveal a lot of very interesting things through all these studies. Other questions? Oh, there's one. Let me see. Oh, no. It's also from Singapore. other people want to make a comment on this, please? If you have comment.
Maybe going back to something that you mentioned earlier, and the communication between sort of conservationists and the general public. I wanted to mention that, yeah, in Hong Kong we have a scheme for our fish ponds where yeah, if they are managed in a way that is more beneficial for the birds, so they're drained every now and then for the waders, then they will receive a subsidy. And this is also why I wanted to mention Alang Preng in Cambodia, because the same sort of thing, right, is that if farmers manage the rice fields in a more environmentally friendly way, then they also, I think that these incentives are really inspiring and very, very effective. The sort of the question that I wanted to ask is what you think about more practices such as merit release, and what you can do about that, or how you think that practice is going to continue.
That is not a new question. Well, many people, I know that in many, particularly in Buddhist country, that is a problem, because the mercy release is it's a way that people think that they can do something good for themselves, but in fact it's harmful for conservation. Yeah, but I know that in some countries, the conservation organizations actually approach the religious institutions, and if the some of those religious head of the religious institutions saying something about that you should not do to buy the animal for releasing, because first many animals are actually caught for this purpose, so you are not doing anything good for releasing them. And many animals die during the capture. So and also when you can see that many people, when they release the animal, they're releasing the wrong habitat, like freshwater species they release in the sea, and so this is something that we need to work with the I believe we work with the with the religious institution. But of course, I also heard that in some countries the religious institution were quite stubborn. They didn't want to admit this is a problem, so we need to educate the public. I think the conservation organizations should educate the public and saying that this is in fact not really as a very mercy act as you think. Yeah, this is not the right big. This may not actually help you to say improve your merit, and you can go to heaven and something like that. So I think that this is something that I think that for a lot of people it is just becoming just a habit. Okay, I buy something, set it free, and then I do something good. I'm a nice guy and think, but you just have to remind them that this is not as nice as you think. Yeah, I know it's not easy because it's not popular. People will hate you tell them the truth like this, because they think so simple that they will pay a little bit of money, they release a bird, and then they just make themselves feel good, and then you tell them no, this is not the right thing to do. And some people may actually resist this and say no, this is a very easy way to make myself feel good. I think so it takes time, I think, for something like an education and things. But that is a different question. I think mercy release is rather complicated question, and that's why some conservationists has to work with the religious institution about this. Any other questions, people? In the audience. Because this is a good chance that you want to know more about the Asian Ornithological Conference and the afterward work, there is a good chance. So don't be shy. I mean, you just maybe just type your questions on the checkbox. Face to face, meeting is better. People are easier for them to talk and ask questions. Oh yeah, Olivia. Unmute.
First, who was first? Somebody else was. I saw a hand from somebody else.
What? Is there a hand from somebody else?
Yes. Hayana.
Hi, Simba.
Yes. Yes, Hanyama-san. Yes.
Through the webinar and your experience, what is the best method to monitoring the open land small bird in wintering ground? The loss count is not if the loss is changed and hard to find, it is not good method. How do you think about good method to monitoring the winter birds?
Yes. Thank you very much for raising this question. And in fact, roost count is very exceptional because not many wintering birds will gather in big roosts. So for wintering bird, that's why we said for wintering bird sense monitoring is difficult. Is in a way, in many places, what we do is something like also we need to a lot of bird watchers. We just similar to the breeding bird survey, we can divide the country into many smaller grids, smaller units, and the bird watcher during the wintering season just record what species exist or not, give it a list. So at the end of the season, that we will have something like a map of some species. For example, yellow wagtail. Yellow wagtail is all found in these places, or we can see that Oriental reed warbler found here and here. Through more years, if we have a good coverage, then we will starting to analyze and then have some idea about the changes of distribution, whether they are stable, whether they are increasing, expanding, whether they are restricting, and this can give some good indication about the population. Of course, it's not perfect, but for the wintering birds, I think for most species there is no way to know the exact number. So from the changes of distribution we do, and also that's the reason why from the bunting count we are not really asking people to count roosts, but to report where are the buntings, because in the wintering countries, we do not have that many bird watchers. So from the beginning, we ask them just record your sites on the eBird. Just mark down your sites where you have seen them. I hope that will be the intention was. Our intention is we want to have more people participating, and then gradually you have more people reporting on the eBird. Then we can also start to analyze this, because I have joined recently, I mean, half a year ago, joined an eBird webinar organized by Cornell University, and they are starting to use the eBird data they have from North America to start to analyze the status of birds changes, because they have lots of data from bird watcher, so they can start to do this. But for Asia, at the moment, the reporting is still very low. So we cannot really, judging from the data, to tell the distribution of the abundance changes of our population. So that's the reason why that we, for the bunting count, we promote the eBird. I know that the Barber Society is also promoting eBird, and we hope that more countries can promoting eBird, and people, the bird watchers, can record the birds they saw, and then we have some way to tell the changes of the population. Of course, I personally think that we need to be very careful, because there's a lot of bias. Because there's some bird watchers, maybe they do not report very common birds. Like if I go out, I may not report tree sparrows. But just tell them that you have the list. You have to report everything you see there. Okay, tree sparrow too common. Well, no, you have to report this. Otherwise, sometimes that at the beginning of the bunting count, something very funny that you look at the result that you receive. You may assume the yellow-breasted bunting is the most abundant species, because everybody is reporting yellow-breasted bunting, but not other species. So that's why we encourage them to also report other species of buntings, and then we know about the abundance of them, the distribution of them. And that's a start. And we hope that we can get more people interested in it, get people used to it, and we hope that maybe something like 10 years later, we will have some reasonable coverage of this. And this is quite possible, because just look at the example in China. About 20 years ago in China, not many people would watch birds. It would be almost impossible to say to ask the bird watchers to do the monitoring of the abundance of birds in China. But now, some places, some bigger cities, I know that I think in Chengdu, in Sichuan, they are starting to do monitoring program, because they have enough number of bird watchers. So that's the reason why I think that and it is just within about 20 years time. It's not really a long time. So I do hope in many Asian countries, like in Thailand, they already have many people interested in birds. We hope that we can also expand in Cambodia, in Vietnam, in also Myanmar, and also this time in Thailand workshop. I'm very happy to meet Dr. Santi, who is actually teaches in Lao University, and he is also interested in birds. I hope that we got also more people, bird watchers from Lao, and then we maybe in the future will have a better coverage of the birds, and better report, and then we can start to tell what are the changes of the population of wintering birds, because wintering birds is not easy. But also in Japan, we also use reporting from bird watchers about different breeds of the area. So we were starting to analyze whether they are expanding, restricting, like introduce the species like Chinese Huamei expanding a lot. Well, they obviously they increase in number. Some species more or less the same. Maybe the number is stable or something like that. That we can start to have a conclusion of this. Oh, Olivia.
Yes, thank you. I have two questions. The first one is now we have a very good action plan for the yellow-breasted bunting. Do you have any possibility to find out whether the different countries that are part of this action plan for this species, how they can report on progress or any actions that have been taken? That would be interesting to know if governments really take action or not, because now I think the audience here is mainly non-governmental. I don't know whether there are also some governmental representatives here. And my second question is, we have heard about the 5 other bunting species. Do you have an intention to widen the action plan for the yellow-breasted bunting to the other bunting species, or provide an action plan for other some of these other 5 species? So that these are my 2 questions.
Your first question about the reporting from countries, and you know that because we still do not have a good international structure. I'm trying to, because the action plan was just really adopted and launched last year. I am trying to convince, because the easiest thing is trying to establish some project between the bilateral agreements between, say, countries like Russia, Japan, China, Japan, Korea, Russia, something like this. Have some projects to have this. At least at the moment, I'm reporting the Landbird things to these countries. And that was just the beginning, and I do hope in a few years' time we will come back with some country with some results. But having said that, the yellow-breasted bunting since we started to the compilation of the action plan, it actually, the profile has risen a lot. A lot of people now talk about yellow-breasted bunting, and also one thing that we are really, really glad to hear that is in, I think, 2021, I think. Yeah, when China revised the national protected list, the yellow-breasted bunting is put as the first category of the protected list. That is, of course, one of the target that we want to reach. It is a highest protection status in China, and some people reported poaching has ceased in some places, but poaching illegal hunting need to be monitored in the long term. So that is probably another question of this. So I do hope that there will be more cooperation on this, and some of them are not really strictly governmental, but several years ago we also worked very closely with the Russian scientists and have some survey in Sakhalin. And also some banding of the yellow-breasted bunting, and because the Sakhalin population may be the closest to the Hokkaido population of the yellow-breasted bunting. So there are some actions it's on. So maybe say after a few years I can summarize this and hope that we can actually present it, say this is an outcome of the action plan. For other species, you know that first, realistically, we need resources. And I think maybe the best way is to, if we have a bigger body, coordinated body, we should try to have an action plan for land birds in Eastern Asia. Meanwhile, to cover more species. So that some approaches like this, because one sad thing is, apart from a few species like rustic bunting, we know that it's vulnerable and things, but for most other species, it's still not yet. We still do not know very well. Meanwhile, its status. Some Korean friends told me that, well, they believe the chestnut bunting was in serious decline, but that was probably historical. I mean, well, something like happened in the 70s and 80s. Now the population is stable. In fact, if you check the yellow-breasted bunting, starting from the data from the 1990s, you may also have a impression that, oh, they're stable, because the biggest drop was probably in the 1980s, and then after the drop, and they will be fluctuating, and then you think, oh, this is not in a very massive drop, but they are actually dropped from that area in the 60s. So I believe that some other species are also declining, but first of all, we need to have a very good monitoring program in Asia, so we know that what species actually will in what status. And you know that from Asia, we are very envious to look at the things in Europe, that many species are actually declining, and also in different countries, because you have many different countries that all have their own monitoring program. So you may actually turn out a page, and then, okay, for these species like the great wheat warbler, these countries are increasing, these are stable, these countries are decreasing. And that's the overall in Europe, what's the situation of it. And we definitely, we really hope that we can do something very similar one day in Asia. Hope that maybe in 20 or 30 years' time, when we have more bird watcher, people working more on this, then we will have some good results, information on this.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the floor? Because I see that we still have 5 minutes, but if there is no urgent questions, I would just like to say, first of all, we would really actually appreciate everybody coming to this webinar. It's a Saturday afternoon. I know that so really appreciate your effort. And also, if you have questions, you can still contact me. I believe while you are registering, maybe you will probably have my email address, or it probably is not that difficult to find my email address or somewhere. So you can actually still contact us if you have any questions. And I do hope that we can actually keep that kind of Landbird Monitoring and Conservation network, and we hope that we can gradually expanding to more more people in Asia. And regarding the question they said about our international body, and I think today I'm really happy to glad to learn that from Olivia that that the Flyway Working Group of CMS has contacted EAFP on this matter. And I think I will try to work with some of my colleagues on. We are also asking some countries to propose that the EAFP should expand their scope to cover all migratory species. Not easy, because there are some resistance. I don't want to say what kind of resistance there. It's not easy. It's very frustrating, but we will try. I mean, we will try again, because we say that there is a need. There is really a need like this, and we should actually do something like that. I will talk to my colleagues about this, and hopefully that we will have a better international platform. Once this is also included in the EAFP, I think it's easier to approach the country government about emphasizing the importance of this. Protection of the landbirds in Asia, and also in a way, if you want to monitor the population, banding is in fact a very useful way to monitor the population, because it's a standardized controlled way of catching birds, and you from after some years, you will know that what species are increasing or decreasing. In fact, I always just say that banding is not just for migration study. You can study about the local movement of the bird, learn a lot more about the birds. You can learn about the parasites on the bird because you touch the bird. You have the bird in the hand. You can have a lot of studies, and you can also monitor the population of birds because we all in the field, we know that some birds are notoriously difficult to find. But if you have a controlled netting, and sometimes you will find some birds that you may not know that they're here, because they are very secretive, but they caught on the net. And over the years, then we will have a better idea about the species, the abundance of these species through banding. So we will also try to convince more government to think about a good program about the bird banding in Asia. Yeah, but there's a lot of things to be done. But I think in the last 2 or 3 decades, in fact, we have achieved a lot of things in Asia. We're starting to achieve a lot of things, and hope that we can also catch up with the rest of the world on the land bird monitoring and conservation. So I would just say that if there is no questions, should we just call the the end of the webinar now?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you everyone. Thank you everyone for attending. Yep. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.